Clean it up or say goodbye to your daughter. That is the first thing I heard when I walked into my company lobby. After 5 years abroad, I was excited to surprise my son. Instead, I saw him mopping the floor while his mother-in-law laughed and kicked dirty water in his face. She thought he's helpless. She had no idea I was standing right behind her. But I didn't stop her. I simply pulled my hat down, stepped into the elevator, and hit the button for the 50th floor server room. She wants to play dirty. Let's play. My name is Henry, and I built this company from a garage startup into a global empire. I left my son, Jack, in charge while I handled our mergers in London. Jack is a good man. Too good, he has a heart of gold, which makes him a target for sharks. I arrived at the tower at 8 a.m., carrying a gift for my granddaughter. The lobby was quiet, except for the sound of a mop slapping against the tiles. The smell of bleach was overpowering. I froze when I recognized the man holding the mop. It was Jack. He looked like a ghost, thin, pale, and trembling. Standing near the security desk was Patricia, his mother-in-law. She was dressed in a Chanel suit, holding a latte, watching him with cold, dead eyes. "Hurry up," she said, checking her reflection in the glass. "My friends are coming for the tour at 9. I want you to open the door for us. I want them to see where you belong." I heard Jack whisper, "Please, Patricia, just let me see Lily this weekend." "I'm doing what you asked. We'll see," she laughed. "Depends on how shiny this floor gets." The elevator doors closed, cutting off the sound of her cruel laughter. The silence of the rising cabin was heavy, but the rage boiling inside me was louder. My hands, usually steady, clenched into fists so tight my knuckles turned white. I watched the floor numbers tick upward, 10, 20, 30. Why was Jack mopping the floor? Why was he begging to see his own daughter? And where was my wife, Mary? Mary was the reason I had stayed away for so long. Or rather, the reason I had been forced to stay away. 5 years ago, just before I left for London, Mary had fallen ill. A sudden, mysterious neurological decline. Patricia, who had been a nurse in her youth before marrying into money, had insisted on taking care of her. She had convinced me that London was too dangerous for Mary's fragile state and that the best doctors were here. "Go, Henry," Mary had whispered to me from her bed, her eyes groggy. "Build the future for our son. Patricia will take care of me." I trusted her. I trusted family. The elevator chimed at the 50th floor. This wasn't the executive suite. This was the nervous system of the building, the server room. I stepped out into the cool, blue-lit corridor. The biometric scanner at the door was the first test. If Patricia had wiped my access, I would have to break in. I placed my palm on the glass. "Welcome, Chairman Henry." The robotic voice was the sweetest thing I had heard all morning. She hadn't wiped me. She probably thought I was too old, too disconnected, or too busy in London to check the back-end systems. Or maybe she thought I was dead. I hadn't video-called in 6 months. The last time I tried, Patricia told me Mary was in a coma and Jack was too depressed to speak. I walked to the main terminal, a massive wall of screens known as the Eye. I typed in my override code. Information flooded the screens. I didn't look at stock prices or trade deals. I pulled up the internal security feeds and the financial transfers for the last 5 years. What I saw made my blood run cold. The company accounts were being drained, systematically. Millions of dollars funneled into shell companies registered to Patricia and her slimy nephew, Todd. But it was the security footage that broke my heart. I rewound the tapes. I saw Jack being thrown out of his own office 3 years ago. I saw Todd taking over the CEO's chair, putting his feet up on the mahogany desk I had carved by hand. I saw Jack being demoted to mailroom clerk, then janitor. And then, I searched for Mary. I typed her name into the medical logs of the company's private insurance. Status: deceased. My heart stopped. Deceased. 2 years ago. No, that couldn't be. If Mary was dead, why was Patricia still using her leverage? Why was Jack begging? Jack wouldn't be scrubbing floors for a memory. He was doing it for Lily, yes, but there had to be more. I switched to the camera feeds for the residential wing of the building. The penthouse was occupied by Patricia and Todd. They were living in my home, drinking my wine. I checked the guest suites. Empty. I checked the private nursing wing on the 10th floor. Empty. "Where are you, Mary?" I whispered. I began cycling through every camera in the building: stairwells, parking garages, storage units. Then, I saw it, camera B4. The sub-basement. The sub-basement was an old storage area from when the building was first constructed. It was damp, dark, and technically condemned due to poor ventilation. It wasn't on the main elevator line. You had to take the freight elevator to the basement, then walk down a flight of concrete stairs. In the grainy black and white footage of a hallway filled with old filing cabinets, a figure moved. It was an old woman. She was wearing a tattered gray dress. She was pushing a heavy cart of laundry. She stopped, leaning against the wall to catch her breath. A security guard, one of Patricia's hired goons, walked by and shoved her. She fell to the hard concrete. She looked up, even through the pixelated screen. I knew those eyes. I knew the shape of her face. Even though it was gaunt and hollow, it was Mary. She wasn't dead. She was a prisoner. A primal roar ripped from my throat. I grabbed a heavy metal chair next to me and slammed it into the wall. The noise echoed in the silent room. They told me she was in a coma. They listed her as dead to steal her life insurance and shares, but they kept her down there. Why? To control Jack. Do as we say, or Mommy goes to the special hospital where accidents happen. I realized the full scope of the trap. They had my son, they had my wife. They had my granddaughter, and they thought they had my company. I sat down, breathing heavily. I needed to calm down. If I went down there guns blazing, they might hurt her. Patricia was vicious. If she knew I was here, she would use Mary as a shield. I needed to be a ghost. I needed to destroy them from the inside out, piece by piece, until they were begging for mercy. I turned back to the computer. Step 1, I muttered. Let's turn off the lights. I accessed the building's environmental controls. I isolated the HVAC system for the penthouse and the executive offices. I turned the temperature down to 50 degrees. Then, I locked the controls with the encryption key that only I possessed. Next, I went to the financial mainframe. Patricia was expecting a transfer of $5 million today at noon. It was a consulting fee for a fake project. I rerouted the transfer. Instead of her Cayman Islands account, I sent it to a charity for victims of elder abuse. Then, I opened the elevator control system. Patricia had said her friends were coming for a tour at 9. She wanted to humiliate Jack. Let's give them a tour they won't forget, I said. I left the server room. I took the service stairs down. I had to see Mary. I had to know she was okay before I started the war. The descent to the sub-basement took 20 minutes. My knees ached, but adrenaline pushed me forward. The air got heavier and smellier the lower I went. It smelled of mold and stale water. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I hid behind a stack of old pallets. The room was a large, open concrete box filled with industrial laundry machines. This is where the building's linens were washed. But it wasn't professional staff working here. It was Mary. And 2 other elderly people I didn't recognize. Mary was standing by a massive washing machine, struggling to lift a heavy bag of wet towels. Her hands, once so delicate, were red and raw. Her beautiful silver hair was matted and dirty. "Move it, old hag," a voice boomed. A guard sat on a crate, eating a sandwich. He threw a crust of bread at her. I'm trying," Mary rasped. Her voice was weak. "My back. I don't care about your back. Patricia wants these pressed by 10, or you don't eat." I stepped out from behind the pallets. The guard didn't see me at first. He was too busy laughing at his own cruelty. I didn't say a word. I walked up behind him. He heard my footsteps and started to turn. "Hey, who are?" I didn't give him a chance to finish. I grabbed the back of his head and slammed his face into the crate he was sitting on. There was a sickening crunch of cartilage. He slumped to the floor, unconscious. Mary gasped and dropped the laundry bag. She backed away, terrified. She didn't recognize me. I was wearing a hat, a coat, and a mask of rage. "Please," she whimpered, holding her hands up, "I'll work faster. Don't hurt me." Tears streamed down my face. I took off my hat. I stepped into the light. "Mary," I choked out, "it's me." "It's Henry." She froze. She squinted, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. She took a trembling step forward. "Henry," she whispered, Am I dead? Is this heaven?" "No, my love," I said, rushing to her. I wrapped my arms around her frail body. She felt like a bird, all bones and trembling skin. "I'm here, I'm real." She collapsed into my chest. sobbing, "You came back. They said you abandoned us. They said you found a new wife in London." "Lies," I said, stroking her hair, "all lies. I'm going to get you out of here, no." She pulled back, fear seizing her eyes again. "You can't, the cameras. Patricia. She has Lily. If I leave, she hurts Jack. She hurts Lily. You have to go, Henry. You have to hide." "I'm not hiding," I said, my voice turning into a growl. "But I need you to be strong for a little longer. Just a few hours. Can you do that?" "Why?" "Because if I take you now, they might run, they might hurt Lily before I can get to her. I need to cut off the head of the snake, I need to catch them all." I looked at the unconscious guard. I dragged him behind the industrial dryer and zip-tied his hands and feet. I took his radio and his access card. "Mary, listen to me," I said, holding her face. "At noon, there is a board meeting. Patricia plans to announce herself as permanent CEO. I will be there. Until then, you stay in the corner. Pretend you are working. If anyone asks about the guard, say he went to the bathroom." "Henry, they are monsters," she warned. "I know," I said, kissing her forehead. "But they just woke up the devil." I made my way back up to the lobby level, sticking to the service corridors. I changed into a janitor's uniform I found in a locker. It was a perfect disguise. No one looks at the help. I found Jack near the main entrance. He was still mopping the same spot. His spirit was completely broken. Patricia was there, greeting a group of 5 women. They were all dressed in expensive furs and jewelry, looking like vultures circling a carcass. "And this," Patricia announced loudly, gesturing to the lobby, "is the empire I manage. It's a heavy burden, but someone has to do it." "Oh, Patricia, you are a saint," one of the women cooed, "dealing with all this business after poor Henry disappeared." "Disappeared is a kind word," Patricia sighed dramatically. "Ran off with a younger woman is the truth. But I don't like to gossip." My jaw clenched. "And who is this?" one of the women asked, pointing at Jack with a disgusted look. He missed a spot. Patricia smiled a wicked smile. "Ladies, this is Jack. My son-in-law." The women gasped. "The heir. Doing manual labor. He has mental struggles." Patricia lied smoothly. "We find that simple, repetitive tasks help him stay grounded. Otherwise, he gets violent." Jack flinched. He gripped the mop handle tightly, his eyes fixed on the floor. "I'm not violent," he whispered. "Speak up when you're spoken to." Patricia snapped. She kicked the bucket. Dirty water splashed all over Jack's legs and onto the shoes of one of the guests. "AW!" the guest screamed. "Jack!" Patricia shrieked. "Look what you did. Clean her shoes. Now." Jack hesitated. "Do it," Patricia hissed, leaning in close to him. "Or no visit this weekend." Jack slowly dropped to his knees. He pulled a rag from his pocket. He reached for the woman's shoe. I couldn't watch this. It was time for the first strike. I pressed the button on the guard's radio I had stolen, but I keyed it into the PA system override I had set up in the server room. Suddenly, a loud, piercing feedback noise screeched through the lobby speakers. Everyone covered their ears. Screech. Then, a voice cut through. It wasn't my voice. It was a recording I had found in the archives, a recording of Patricia from 5 years ago, speaking to her nephew Todd. The audio was crisp and clear, booming through the high-ceilinged lobby. "I tell you, Todd, the old man is stupid. Henry trusts me. Once he goes to London, we sedate Mary. We drug her tea. We make her look crazy. Then we own Jack." Silence fell over the lobby. The guests looked around, confused. Patricia's face went white. "What is that?" "Turn it off." "Security." The recording continued. "What about the kid?" Todd's voice asked. "Lily. She's the leverage. We threatened to put her in a boarding school in Switzerland if Jack fights back. He's soft, he'll fold." Patricia was trembling. She looked at her friends. It's a prank. A deep fake. Someone has hacked the system." She ran toward the security desk. "Shut it down. Shut it down now." The security guards were frantically pressing buttons, but nothing worked. I had locked them out. Jack was still on his knees, but he wasn't cleaning anymore. He was looking up, his eyes wide. He recognized the voices. He realized that his mother's illness hadn't been natural. He stood up, Patricia turned on him. "Did you do this? You ungrateful rat!" She raised her hand to slap him. I was standing 20 feet away, leaning on a broom. I caught Jack's eye. I nodded once. I don't know if he recognized me in the uniform, or if he just felt the shift in power, but for the first time in years, Jack didn't flinch. He caught Patricia's wrist in midair. The lobby went deadly silent. "Don't," Jack said. His voice was raspy, but steady. "Let go of me!" Patricia screamed. "Security! Arrest him! He's assaulting me!" 2 guards rushed forward. These were the hired muscle. They pulled batons. Jack let go of her arm and backed up. The fear returned. He was one man against an army. I couldn't reveal myself yet. The board meeting was the kill shot. I needed Patricia to feel safe enough to go upstairs. I tapped a command into my phone. The fire sprinklers in the lobby, and only the lobby, activated. Whoosh. Torrents of cold, dirty water rained down, not the clean mist of a modern system, but the sludge-filled water that sits in pipes for years. The guests screamed as their furs were ruined. Patricia shrieked as her hair collapsed and her makeup ran. The guards slipped on the wet tile. In the chaos, I grabbed Jack's arm and pulled him toward the service elevator. "Hey! Let go!" Jack struggled. "Quiet," I said in my normal voice. "It's Dad." Jack froze. He looked at the janitor holding him. He looked into my eyes. "Dad!" He choked. I shoved him into the elevator and hit the button for the 50th floor. As the doors closed, I saw Patricia standing in the rain, screaming like a banshee, ruining her Chanel suit. Inside the elevator, Jack collapsed. He didn't hug me. He slid down the wall and buried his face in his hands. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I lost it all. I lost the company. I let them take Mom. I'm a coward." I knelt beside him. "You are not a coward. You survived. A coward would have run away. You stayed for Lily. You stayed for Mary. Mom, she's dead, Dad. They told me she died 2 years ago. They showed me the ashes. She's not dead," I said firmly. Jack's head snapped up. "What?" "She's in the sub-basement. I saw her." I spoke to her. Jack's face went through a dozen emotions in a second. Shock, disbelief, relief, and then pure, unadulterated rage. The kind of rage that burns cities to the ground. He stood up. His hands were shaking, but not from fear this time. "They have her in the basement. Like an animal." "Yes." "I'm going to kill them," Jack said. He moved to hit the button for the lobby. "No," I said, blocking the panel. "Get out of my way, Dad. They have Mom. And if you go down there now, the guards will shoot you. Or they will call the secondary team holding Lily and she will disappear. Do you want that?" Jack stopped. "Where is Lily?" "I'm tracking her now." I pulled out a tablet I had taken from the server room. "Patricia has a live feed on her phone. I hacked it." I showed him the screen. Lily, my 7-year-old granddaughter, was sitting in a room that looked like a classroom. But there were bars on the window. She was coloring quietly. "That's the East Wing," Jack said. "The old nursery. They keep her locked in there. She's safe for now. But we have one shot to end this permanently." "What's the plan?" Jack asked. He wiped the tears from his face. He looked like the man I had left in charge 5 years ago. "The board meeting is in 1 hour. Patricia thinks the sprinkler system was a malfunction. She thinks the audio recording was a hack by a disgruntled employee. She is arrogant. She will still try to seize the company today." I handed Jack a suit I had stashed in the server room closet. It was one of my old ones, a bit big for him now that he was so thin, but it would work. "Put this on, shave. Wash your face and you?" Jack asked. "I'm going to prepare the presentation." I smiled cold. "It's going to be a killer." 11:55 a.m. The boardroom was packed. The shareholders were murmuring. The events in the lobby had everyone on edge. Patricia swept into the boardroom, the doors banging open ahead of her. Todd followed close behind, sporting a greasy smirk that screamed arrogance. Patricia had managed to change into a severe charcoal power suit, but the cracks in her armor were visible. Her hair was slicked back, still wet and smelling faintly of stagnant water, and her eyes held a frantic, manic gleam. She didn't just walk. She stomped to the head of the table, my chair, and sat down, gripping the armrests as if to physically anchor her stolen authority. "Apologies for the childish disturbance in the lobby," she announced, her voice clipped and breathless. "We have resolved the technical glitches. It was nothing more than a crude prank by the maintenance staff I fired earlier today." The explanation fell flat. A senior shareholder, a man I had known for 20 years, looked at her over his spectacles. "But is it true?" he asked, his voice shaking. "The recording. The specific threats against Henry's wife." Patricia let out a laugh that sounded more like a bark. It was shrill, forced, and entirely devoid of humor. "AI, ladies and gentlemen. Artificial intelligence," she scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. "Enemies of this company commissioned a deepfake to destabilize our stock price moments before the vote. It is a pathetic, desperate tactic, but let me assure you," she hissed, leaning over the table with terrifying intensity, "I have full, absolute control." She signaled Todd with a sharp, dismissive flick of her wrist, the kind of gesture one uses for a servant, not a business partner. "Let's proceed to the vote," she announced, her voice dripping with a faux solemnity that made my stomach turn. She smoothed the lapel of her blazer, projecting an image of absolute control. "The motion is to remove Henry officially as chairman due to prolonged abandonment and severe mental incapacity, and to install myself, Patricia, as CEO for life." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. I could see the sweat beading on the foreheads of the few honest board members left, men and women I had mentored, now cowed into submission by her reign of terror. "I second the motion," Todd said quickly, almost too quickly. He was practically vibrating with greed, his eyes darting around the room as if counting the money he was about to steal. "All in favor?" Patricia asked, leaning forward, her eyes scanning the table like a hawk searching for dissent. Half the hands went up immediately. I knew them all, the corrupt ones. The ones she had bought with promises of stock options and offshore accounts. They didn't look at each other. They stared at the mahogany table, selling their souls for a payout. "All opposed?" Patricia asked, her tone bored, already reaching for the gavel to seal my fate. The double oak doors to the boardroom didn't just open. They exploded inward, slamming against the wall stops with a violence that made the crystal water glasses on the table tremble. Jack walked in. He wasn't the broken man mopping the lobby floor anymore. He was wearing my charcoal gray suit, the one I had worn when we rang the bell at the stock exchange. It hung slightly loose on his frame, a testament to the starvation diet Patricia had forced upon him, but the tailoring couldn't hide the steel that had returned to his spine. He was clean-shaven, his jaw set in a line of grim determination. He looked thin, yes, almost gaunt, but he stood tall, filling the doorway with a presence that had been absent for 5 years. "I oppose," Jack said. His voice wasn't a whisper. It was a thunderclap. Patricia rolled her eyes, letting out a dramatic sigh of annoyance. "Security. Why is the janitor in here?" "I thought I gave specific instructions to keep the help out of the executive suite." "I'm not the janitor," Jack said, taking a slow, deliberate step toward the head of the table. He ignored the gasps of the shareholders. "I am the majority shareholder acting as proxy for Henry, and I am vetoing this farce." Patricia slammed her hand on the table, her composure cracking. "Henry is gone," she shouted, her face twisting into a mask of ugly rage. "He abandoned us. He abandoned you. He is rotting in some London flat with a mistress while I saved this company. Did he?" The question didn't come from Jack. It came from everywhere and nowhere. Suddenly, the lights in the boardroom cut out, the hum of the air conditioning died. The heavy automated blinds began to descend over the floor-to-ceiling windows with a mechanical whir, blocking out the midday sun and plunging the room into absolute, pitch darkness. "What is going on?" Todd squealed, his voice cracking in panic. "Is this a power surge?" "Patricia, do something." "Stay calm." Patricia yelled into the dark. "It's just a glitch." A single, blinding spotlight turned on at the far end of the room, cutting through the darkness like a blade. I stood there, bathed in the white light. I wasn't wearing a janitor's uniform. I wasn't wearing an Italian suit. I was wearing my old canvas field coat, the one stained with oil from the first factory floor, the one I wore when I built this empire with my bare hands. It was a symbol they had all forgotten. I held a small, black remote control in my hand. "Hello, Patricia," I said. The silence was deafening. You could hear a pin drop on the carpet. The air left the room, sucked out by the sheer impossibility of my presence. "Henry," Patricia whispered. She slumped back in her chair, her face draining of all color. She looked like she had seen a ghost, but You're in London. You never call, the report said. I was busy, I said, walking slowly toward the table, my footsteps echoing in the silence. I stopped at the foot of the table, looking down at the people who had betrayed me. Busy watching you destroy my family. Busy watching you turn my legacy into a slaughterhouse. Todd scrambled up from his chair, pointing a shaking finger at me. It's a hologram, he shouted, desperate to rationalize the nightmare standing before him. It's a deep fake. It's another trick by the hackers. Is this a trick? I reached out and picked up a heavy crystal pitcher filled with ice water from the center of the table. I didn't hesitate. I smashed it onto the floor with every ounce of strength I had. Crash! The sound was explosive. Shards of glass flew across the room, skittering across the polished floor. Ice water splashed onto Todd's expensive shoes. The violence of the act, the sheer physical reality of it, shattered their denial instantly. I am back, I said, my voice low and dangerous. And I have brought the minutes for today's meeting. I pressed a button on the remote. The massive presentation screen behind Patricia, usually reserved for quarterly earnings and growth charts, lit up with a static hiss. It wasn't a PowerPoint. It was a live, high-definition feed from the sub-basement. The shareholders gasped in collective horror. On the screen, they saw the truth stripped of all pretense. They saw the squalid conditions, the mold climbing the concrete walls, the flickering bulb, the buckets of dirty water. And they saw the empty space where Mary had been chained like a dog just hours before. Where is she? Patricia hissed, her eyes darting to her phone on the table. She was trying to text her guards, trying to activate her fail-safe. Looking for your muscle? I asked, intercepting her glance. I clicked the button again. The screen split. The new feed showed the hallway directly outside the boardroom double doors. The image was undeniable. 6 police officers were marching the basement guards and the nursery security team down the hall. They were in handcuffs, heads bowed. And walking behind them, holding the hand of a female police officer, was a small girl with pigtails, Lily. Jack let out a breath he had been holding for years, his knees nearly buckling with relief. Lily. And who is that with her? I asked rhetorically, my eyes locked on Patricia. The boardroom doors opened again, slower this time. Mary walked in. She was supported by a paramedic, wrapped in a thick thermal blanket, looking frail and ancient. But she was walking. Her head was up. She looked at the room of suits, and then she looked at her son. Mom. Jack broke. He didn't care about the board, the money, or the company. He ran to her, falling to his knees to embrace her. They held each other, weeping, a tableau of brokenness and love that shamed every person in the room. The boardroom erupted into chaos. Shareholders were shouting over each other, some claiming ignorance, others trying to flee. Patricia was frantically trying to gather her papers, shoving documents into her briefcase with trembling hands. This is a setup, Patricia screamed, her voice shrill and desperate, cracking under the weight of her unraveling lies. He staged it. That woman is an actor. My sister is in a care home in Switzerland. This is a hostile takeover based on fraud. Sit down, Patricia, I commanded. My voice wasn't loud. I didn't scream. But it carried the weight of absolute authority, the weight of the man who had built the walls she was trying to hide behind. She froze. She looked at me, then at the police entering the room, and finally, she sank back into her chair. Defeated, she sat. You are finished, I said. I have already sent the evidence to the district attorney. Kidnapping, embezzlement, elder abuse, fraud. Todd tried to run for the side door. I wouldn't, I said. The door opened and 2 officers stepped in. Todd put his hands up, sobbing. Patricia looked at me with pure venom. You think you've won? I have power of attorney. I have signatures. Signatures obtained under duress are void, I said. And I have something else. I looked at the screen. I have the audio from your office this morning. The one where you told Todd to get rid of the old lady. Once the vote was passed, Patricia's face fell. That was the nail in the coffin. Attempted murder. Why? She whispered. I kept this company afloat. You turned my company into a prison, I said. I leaned over the table, getting right in her face. You made my son mop floors. You put my wife in a dungeon. You locked my granddaughter in a cage. I stood up straight and adjusted my coat. Get her out of my sight. The police moved in. Patricia didn't scream this time. She went limp, realizing the magnitude of her fall. As they dragged her out, she looked at Jack. "I took care of you," she spat. Jack looked at her, holding his mother and daughter. "No. You fed off us." I stood on the balcony of the penthouse. The air was fresh. The cleanup had been extensive, not just the physical cleaning of the basement, but the corporate cleaning. I fired the entire board. I fired every manager Patricia had hired. Mary was in the hospital, but in a VIP suite this time. The doctors said she was malnourished and weak, but she would recover. Her mind was sharp. The dementia Patricia claimed she had was just the result of heavy sedation and isolation. Once the drugs were out of her system, my Mary came back to me. Jack was sitting in the living room behind me, playing with Lily. They were building a castle out of blocks. "Grandpa?" Lily called out. I turned. "Yes, sweetie." "Are the bad people gone forever?" I walked inside and sat down next to them. I picked up a block and placed it on top of their tower. "Yes," I said. "They are gone forever." Patricia and Todd had been denied bail. The charges were piling up. They would spend the rest of their lives in prison. And not a nice prison. I made a few calls to ensure they wouldn't get the white-collar treatment. They would go to general population. They would know what it felt like to be powerless. Jack looked at me. "Dad, I don't know if I can run the company. After everything." "You don't have to," I said. "Not yet. I'm back. I'm going to run things for a while. You take time. Take Mary and Lily on a vacation. Go somewhere warm. Heal and you?" Jack asked. "I have work to do," I said, looking around the penthouse. "I have to clean up this mess." I walked back to the balcony and looked out over the city. They thought they could break us. They thought kindness was weakness. They forgot that the man who built the castle knows exactly how to drop the portcullis. I pulled my phone out. I had one last call to make. "Yes, Mr. Chairman." My lawyer answered. "The basement," I said. "Renovate it. Into what, sir?" "Storage." "No," I said, watching the sun set. "Turn it into a daycare center for the employees' children, free of charge. Make it the brightest, happiest room in the building. Consider it done." I hung up. The darkness was gone. It was time to let the light back in.